Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Welcome to the world premiere of Perry Blackshear's When I Consume You at Fantasia Film Festival. So, with us at this momentous event, we have the cast and the crew of this brilliant, dark, mysterious film that delves into so many different pertinent themes that I think are so important because of this day and age that we live in. So, let's invite everybody in. So welcome Perry Blackshear, Libby Ewing, MacLeod Andrews, and Evan Dumouchel.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
That was the Wachow was a request from.
I requested a Wachow when it come in, so I was just full of joy.
So guys, firstly, congratulations on such a brilliant film. There's so much going on, and it's so interesting, and it works on so many levels. So again, big congratulations to everybody. I've been a really big fan of Perry, your work and the whole team's work since They Look Like People in 2015. And I love The Siren, and it premiered at Ithaca. Perry, you were telling me in Ithaca that this was like the third, this upcoming project was the end of this kind of trilogy. And maybe even the culmination. How would you take that comment? What would you respond to that?
I don't know what I was thinking when I said that, but it's funny. You set out to do a certain thing, and then it sort of becomes something totally different. And I think it's a little bit like, it's sort of like how you can't give yourself your own nickname because it's super weird if you do that. It has to sort of be given to you. But I think the way that we make films together and I make films is that you set out to do a thing, but it also is sort of, you don't really know what you're doing until you've finished it. And especially with these amazing actors and friends of mine, we all sort of make it together. And then after we finished it, we know a lot of what's in there, but some of it we're like, what? Wow, there's so much of us, stuff that our personalities and our life histories and in there that I guess it all, it's one sort of collective dream that we've all made, basically. Yeah.
Amazing. And Libby, Evan, and MacLeod, your performances are really staggering, and I love the depth in which you go to aim with your characters. And they seem so emotionally charged. So I'd love to hear, firstly, how you prepared yourself for these roles, and then also what was it like on set? So Libby, let's start with you. How did you prepare? Because you play so many, you have these ghostly moments that are so spooky. You have these amazing sibling, emotional, very, very heartfelt moments. And then you got these kind of rocky moments. How did you prepare for all of these things?
Yeah, well, when I got the script, really my way into it first and foremost was the relationship between Daphne and Wilson, and the love between siblings. I have an older sister and a younger brother that I fiercely love, and Evan and I are really close friends. So that was just something that I could hook into really, really quickly and easily. And then Evan, Perry, and I kind of rehearsed it like a play. Mm-hmm. So we would get together in LA, and Perry was over Zoom back then, or FaceTime, I don't even know what it was. And we would really dig into the specifics of the characters and their backstory, and we really built that strongly together. And so that felt really great. And then as far as the Rocky elements go, I did do a little boxing training, which I went into thinking that I was going to be like Rocky and really, really good. And I trained with this retired boxer, Tyrell Hendricks. And it was really hard. And I am not a great boxer. And I almost puked every session. It was terrible. So that kind of helped me, I think, tap into the fight of it all. So, and then of course on set, we worked so intimately together that created a nice little bubble where we could just play and dig really deep.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah. Thanks so much. And you were pretty badass. So you did a great job there. I would have not known that you were no experience with boxing. Evan, how did you prepare for your role? The changes that the character undergoes are so vast. yeah, how did you get there?
Yeah, I think Wilson is a little bit further away from Evan than any of the other characters that I've played with this gang, and that was a really scary place to go. But I really admire a lot of qualities about Wilson's character, and so there's a little bit of an element where he never really grew up, and there's a certain childlike innocence to him, and I really tried to lean into that, and I broke up the character kind of into like a Wilson 1.0 and a Wilson 2.0 version of the sort of pendulum swing from childhood to adulthood and that battle in between the two. And so hopefully that's his experience through the movie. And I think that I spent weeks walking around as Wilson 1.0 and trying to internalize that experience for myself, like what that feels like to sort of move with that gait and that posture and that being as small as you possibly can inside your physical form, and seeing how that affected other people too, and try to sort of create that feedback loop to understand how to be that. And then also trying the opposite, which is also not how I walk around every day. And so walking around as Wilson 2.0 was sort of like an interesting experience to see the ways that would affect people. And then as far as the relationship is concerned with us, I mean, I also have siblings. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older sisters. And so we both have that shorthand with our own siblings, but also it grew really easily with each other. And on set, we actually lived together. So Libby and I were living together during the shooting of the experience. And I think that just the ways in which we would get coffee with one another in the morning or just like download about our day, I think that all built into that on-set intimacy and experience of hopefully what comes across as the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I definitely would not want to run into Wilson 2.0 on the street. I think like a bit intimidated, especially after those scenes. MacLeod, we met briefly in 2015 for They Look Like People. And one thing that really resonated with me was that you're such a nice guy. Like, what happened?
It was a really rough couple of years. No, I mean, honestly, I think that was the hardest part of the character for me, is giving myself permission to be an asshole, like a really genuine asshole. And to one of my best friends in the world. And to, as soon as, I was in character, to do whatever I could to just to not care at all about his, to not care at all about his feelings. So I actually, whereas, Evan and Libby did a lot of rehearsing together and were living together and creating that tight bond, I made a point, I know Perry, I think, had asked Evan and I to rehearse, and I actually think I said, no, I don't want to rehearse with Evan. So I rehearsed because my job was sort of to shoulder ram the film from out of left field and like send it spinning on its head a little bit. So I rehearsed with some other friends because I didn't want Evan to know what I was gonna throw at him. And I just knew it'd be a little bit easier for me to set his character back on his heels if I played. And Perry gave me a whole lot of latitude and let me improvise and just kind of try vastly different approaches to the scenes.
Those were good days. Those were good nights. Very, very late.
Mostly nights.
Very late.
Yeah. Very late.
Sound of a great director, just like setting it up so that conflict can, like, those sparks can fly, for sure.
Really great.
Before I get to my next question, I want to remind the audience that please prepare your questions and pop them into the Q&A, and we'll get to those in a little bit. I got a couple more questions for Perry and the crew. So Perry, I think it's just the theme of isolation is just so fascinating, and of course so pertinent with in the world today for so many reasons. Were you did COVID and this whole situation really impact you and influence the story?
I think it's because several people have said it feels like a COVID movie, but we shot it before COVID, which I don't know, what that says about our mind states. It's like we were already in this, but I mean, I think that one of the things that I think makes it feel that way is how claustrophobic we are to the characters' experiences and how lonely it is and how sort of bleak a lot of the sort of, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any other people that exist in this world other than sort of them and their desperation. You know, we definitely didn't set out to make a movie about what it is in the world today or whatever, but you know, I think that aspect of it definitely found its way into the film. I think what happened after, as we were editing it, that we really tried to hold on to the light within the movie, because it does get pretty dark, but there also is light in there. And I think that we just craved that more than ever while cutting it, and needed to make sure that that really came throughout, and in the end, that we didn't lose sight of the characters or their relationship, and sort of, you know, let it get crowded out by all the pain and suffering, and made sure that there was that sort of ending catharsis at the end. Because I mean, the world's pretty hard enough as it is. You know, the world's kind of a horror movie right now, so you know, wanted to give people an ending with something to believe in.
And I think you're totally right about that how close it is, because the camera work is so intimate and it's so close, and the sound is so just pervading and so pointed. Do you want to talk about what drove you in that direction specifically?
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out. I think I really love when the film gives us the experience of someone else that maybe is very different from us. So sort of creating this intense subjectivity. So when Wilson dissociates or gets overwhelmed, I really wanted us to feel what that was like, to, you know, a little bit like with Wyatt and They Look Like People, to feel what it was like to be him. And I also tried to mirror my own experiences with when I got in a car crash. Instead of it being like slow motion and all this stuff, it felt instead extremely calm, kind of quiet. I could hear really well. I was very peaceful for reasons that I don't understand. I think it has to do with adrenaline. But I wanted to kind of mirror those moments in ways that didn't, that felt true to the experiences of the characters. So it was built, the sound and some of the cinematography was sort of inside out, where it stemmed from the characters' experiences. And that was, you know, wanting us to feel what they were feeling in the situations. It's a little intense, adding sort of neorealism to the supernatural, but that's what I love, and that's, you know, that's what we try to do with the film.
Yeah, and like I was telling Perry before, but congratulations to everybody. I just love that scene with the loss scene. That scene where there's something, you know, like it's all very intimate. It's in the you know, it's all on Evan and all the things that are transpiring around him, and like the little details, like the caterpillar, and I just thought it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I really loved that.
That was actually a millipede.
Millie.
Millie the millipede.
Her name.
And I only bring this up is because they named Millie the millipede. And there was a whole existential crisis about what to do after we had her take.
Right.
I believe she's living in McCarran Park in Williamsburg.
But she definitely didn't get eaten by anything.
Definitely a bird.
No. She's had a long life for a millipede.
It was a safe bet for everyone.
We had a small ceremony at the end because we were in emotional places during the movie.
That's a true story. We really did.
Life is so precious. Life is so, you know, anyway, set stories. Yeah.
Yeah, do you guys have any more set stories? Why don't we go a bit further into that? Because I know it was it's a super emotional film. Were there moments where you were just like, you found yourself at a loss? Do you guys need to take breaks? Because again, those scenes are really intense. And do you have any lighter maybe stories so we can not dwell?
Yeah, we definitely have some lighter ones. Yeah. I'll tell one, which is that that scary glyph at the end of the film.
Oh yeah.
That his apartment is my room where I lived, and so I had to sleep sort of sometimes on the floor. The mattress is like in the hallway, and that glyph we drew on the wall, and it was impossible to get off. So even after it was done, it stayed on the wall, covered in fake blood, right above my bed / sleeping bag, and I couldn't get it off for months. So visitors would come over and they would be like, "What the fuck is on your wall. And I'd be like, it's fine. It's nothing. It's a movie. You know, it's like, I don't know why I didn't just paint it over. We were like,
the options are that you made a movie or that you are.
oh God.
Like, what are you?
Libby was like, this is bad. We have to sage this because this is really bad that this is here looking at us all the time. It was like right above my bed for 6 months. I'm sure it affected something.
To
Anyway.
rebalance that energy a little bit.
Libby helped. The balancing of the energy really helped.
Yeah.
But what about, I know that you guys have some too, because I'm sure that there's also things that actors are privy to that directors are not privy to.
Well, no, I mean, the thing I was thinking about was just like the ways in which we conducted our days, you know, because we are a small group, but, you know, Libby and I would arrive with coffee and breakfast and a lot of pep in our step because we found out that not only are we siblings, but we're also really morning people.
We're really morning people.
And these two jokers are like rolling out of bed, like, oh, we're going to make a movie. So like
every morning.
Perry and I were staying together, and both Perry and I are kind of creatures of inertia. So where it's like, if we're awake, we can just keep going and stay awake. But if we're asleep, our body's like, we're just going to stay asleep. So yeah, they'd roll up and we'd have just kind of stumbled out of our bedrooms because we were like, all right, we have to get started. And they'd be like, morning.
The worst. And that was the whole crew. That was the cast and the crew. And we were all there all of a sudden.
And breakfast was sacred because breakfast was not movie time. Breakfast was, you're a human and I'm a human and we're going to talk over breakfast. And then as soon as breakfast is over, 14 hours. Movie time. On set.
Yeah. And there's one more that's I told this and because someone was asking, what was your favorite scene to shoot? And there was some really difficult scenes, one early on in the film that I think we had to sort of stop after a few takes because it was so upsetting for all of us. Yeah. There's a scene that involves, I don't want to give spoilers, but there's purple light and Evan's by himself and there's a phone involved that was really fun for me to shoot. And there was, the fight scenes, the whole thing. But I think there was a scene towards the end that was very emotional on the street where they're together. And I think all of us were really worried that day. It was a big scene. It was kind of scary. We shot in order. So this was a lot riding on this scene. And I think all day everyone was like, kind of like, oh God. And we got out there and it's always intense shooting on the street, especially with emotional scenes, because it is in Greenpoint and there's like drunk hipsters everywhere and like trucks, so who knows who's going to show up and interrupt your scene. So we were all pretty worried, I think, and not worried, but very much. And then something kind of happened while we were shooting the first take. The first take was unbelievable. It was kind of snowing a little bit. And it was this kind of, I just suddenly felt like everything was going to be fine no matter what happened. Like I felt such peace and like, wow, this is amazing. We get to do this. I'm so grateful we get to do this. I'm so grateful these people are here. And every take was amazing. It all somehow, it was like, good Lord.
I feel like we got vortexed that day or something.
Yeah, it was like self-hypnotized or something.
We were like in a communal dream or something. And I remember that day and it was weighing on me heavily that we had that scene to shoot that night. And right up until like 45 minutes beforehand, I was probably way into my head about it. And then like we all get there and everything became so incredibly present and like really like in the now. I mean, it's a little woo-woo, but it felt really nice.
And that's because in contrast, there was us at 4 a.m. in the freezing cold, wearing no clothes, fighting, lying on the ground, covered in dirt. All of us were covered in dirt by the end and blood. And we had to have all these different jackets for Evan. Because they'd be like blood number 1, blood number 2, blood number 5.
Oh yeah.
Number 1,
Same jacket covered in different degrees of blood.
So that peace and tranquility was really pretty remarkable during that moment.
It's amazing. Thanks, guys. I heard Evan and MacLeod, you guys have a great story about a Fantasia alumni, a Fantasia friend, Mike Flanagan. How did you guys meet Mike Flanagan? And you guys were actually ended up on set, 3 of you, for Dr. Sleep. What was that like?
You mean the story of the third best night of my life? Well, sure, I'd love to tell it.
All right, great.
I had taken my wife out to dinner.
Wasn't it like an anniversary?
Was it?
I think, or a birthday.
No, it was a birthday because I remember that I got her. I remember the gift I got her. So it was a beaker. It worked. Okay, there was a reason. It was a good gift. But anyway, so the night started. I didn't put together until after everything happened. But with me holding the door for a group of individuals coming in, and they were like, "Oh, thank you so much." And one of them looked at me and was like, "Thank you so much," like right in my eye. And I was like, yeah, you're welcome. And I carried on with my dinner. And then, we'd been eating for probably 45 minutes at this point. And then I was laughing with my wife. And then I kind of like turned to the side and there was like a guy standing there. And he was like, and he said, hey, I'm so sorry to intrude on your evening, but and this is maybe the only time in my life this has ever happened to me. He said, "Are you MacLeod Andrews?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he went, "I'm Mike Flanagan." And I just jumped out of my chair and I went, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, and I just like hugged him because like, I mean, his first movie, Absentia, especially was such a touchstone for They Look Like People that aside from making us believe that we could do this and that we can make a movie like this, his focus on the like putting the humanity and horror and in characters we care about is something he continues to do just better and better every year, but that we always look to as a kind of guiding star. But so anyway, we had a little freak out. He was like, "Well, I'm just over here." I think he was celebrating finishing shooting Haunting of Hill House, and he was like, "I want you to meet Trevor and some Netflix execs." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And then I went back to my dinner, and then kind of he was finishing up his dinner and ours, and he was just like, "Hey, if you guys want to if you guys want to hang out for a little bit." And I was like, I looked at my wife and I'm like, "I know this is your night." And she was like, "No, this sounds fun." And so we just like hung out for like 3 hours and just talked and yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful night. And then from there, I got home and I madly texted these guys. I was like, "Oh my God, I just met Flanagan." And Mike invited all of us out for a hangout a little bit later and then invited us to come and do a little kind of cameo in Dr. Sleep and be on set for a while. And I mean, I'll let you talk about that experience because that was amazing.
I mean, it was incredible. We really value the kind of family that makes movies together, right? And so you can't imagine that when you get to a set of that size with that level of infrastructure around it and the budget and the studio and everything, that you're going to still get that experience. And he managed to create that sense of community on a massive budget movie that has a whole legacy behind it and didn't have any of the kind of baggage that goes along with that. Just really like steered the ship, and it was really wonderful to watch and be a part of that and be invited into that. It's a lesson in how to be. And it was also just so beautiful. Like they built such a detailed recreation of that world. Oh my God. Like it was just like, I don't know, fanboying on set about every piece because, we're interested in all the technicals, for better or worse. I love the whole filmmaking process. And so, being next to the DP or being next to the gaffers or looking at how they're creating on-set 3D effects is just like really amazing. Anyway.
The mirror ball.
Oh yeah. It was awesome. That's the short version of the long answer I just gave.
Thanks so much for sharing, guys. And I just because he's a Fantasia alum, and the fact that you guys, I think you guys definitely are similar in the sense that this film and all your films feel so personal, but they have that horror kind of element to it. Another thing that I love about your movies, Perry, is that you always have that element of myth and the fantastical and the fantasy. Do you want to talk about, were you always inspired by myth, or was this a bug that kind of, you grew on you?
It's funny. Someone was talking about this to me, and I kind of am jealous of those filmmakers who was like, I was walking around and I saw this film, and then I had this moment where I was like, film. And I never really had that. I think I started making little movies when I was like, 8, and then just didn't stop. And so to me, and doing stuff in the woods with my friends, we were making up stories, we were like playing all the swashbuckling, this and that, and it all felt sort of like just the air we were breathing. Like, why would we not do this? So I mean, I was certainly loved Greek myths and all these great stories, because I think they're sort of not lessons, but they're sort of stories about how to be a person and what matters and what doesn't, and what to do about evil and how to grow up and how to deal with death and all these things. And so I love big stories like that. And I think in my, was it late 20s, I had a pretty bad medical scare for a while, and I started reading a lot of a lot more myths and spiritual texts, and I think that got me through a really tough time. So it went from kind of love, fascination, interest to being something that I feel that has become pretty important in sort of life. And so it's important, and I also just love it so much on a purely like, this is so awesome level. So it's a good combination.
Amazing, thank you. Just a reminder, we're going to open up to questions just after one more question, I guess, with you guys. So please put in your questions into the Q&A spot, and I'm sure these guys would love to answer them.
We'll make them all about Mike Flanagan.
No, definitely not. Libby, I was going to say, was it a bit, how did you feel coming in? Because again, you guys have 2 previous movies with pretty much a very core cast. How was it like coming into the family almost?
Yeah, I wanted to get into this family. So I knew Evan. He was one of my first friends here in Los Angeles, and we met in an acting class. And I think you already had They Look Like People under your belt. Mm-hmm. And then shot The Siren, and I loved They Look Like People. I just became such a fan of that film, and then also just the way that this crew makes movies. And then I was fortunate enough with The Siren to kind of see that whole process and like be watching, a few iterations of the drafts of that. And then I think I met MacLeod separately, like through a Rattlestick theater company, like thing out here in LA. Oh. So, I guess Perry had this script. Evan talked to me about it. I was like, I whatever I can do to get into this crew. But I knew I would have to bring it because the bar is set so high. So I read for it. I auditioned. And then Perry and I met on a call, and I think we got on so well right away. I just fell in love with him so much. We talked for like an hour, and just went back and forth about Daphne and the character. And then I went in knowing that this is a crew where it's like, you have to deliver the scenes, really do the work, and then you need to go make some buckets of blood, like right afterwards, and like get some sound gear on. And I was like completely on board for that.
We've all been sound guy.
Yeah.
Awkward sound guy. Because anyway.
Creepy. Yeah.
And it goes without saying, we are the lucky ones to have you on the team.
That's very nice.
I agree. I think there's a few things with Libby, but one is that it's because it is a family. It's like inviting like a friend over for the holidays. You're always like, oh God, are we gonna survive this? Because it is, it's intense for everybody. But she knocked it out of the park. But I think one of the things that we talked about early on is how much the story of these 2 characters matter to us, and what they went through, and how many ways there are to do stories like this wrong and without thought or whatever. And I think we everybody on the crew cared a lot about doing the characters right and their kind of backstory and what they had been through, as absolutely as best we could, and really sort of go for it with that and never, do whatever we needed to do to make sure that it was real and true to the experiences of us and the people that we love that, the movie is somewhat based on.
Amazing. Thank you. We have a question from Laura, and she is asking, Perry's pictures, sorry, as I've already mentioned, Perry's pictures all have an element of myth and supernatural. Do you guys foresee ever making a picture together that veers more towards straight up realism?
So this is tough because I love neorealism and all the waves, all the new waves. I love so much. But the elements of genre always feels somehow and this is a weird thing to say, but sometimes genre feels more true to life than realism. Because when you are angry, the world doesn't look normal, it looks wrong, and you feel so hot and you can't think straight or see straight. And so I love all kinds of genre because I feel like it's people say that filmmakers, tell the truth by lying, but I think there's something like that where you can tell reality with supernatural somehow. But I do love a straight drama. So maybe one day that will be a new challenge, because we always try to challenge ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're running low on time. Maybe one more question and we can get to the cast from the audience. If not, I have another. So you said you had one of the big difficulties for, where you were filming was like drunken hipsters. I heard that you had another run-in, maybe?
Oh, under the bridge?
Of an animal variety?
Yes, of an animal variety.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Jets and the Sharks?
Yeah, so there's when you have a crew of you and your actors, the way that you scout sets is, okay, if it's raining, you just got to shoot anyway. So we found a place that even if it rained, we could shoot, which was under this highway. And we did not know until I scouted it, but I did not scout it at a certain time of night. And it's a sort of village for cats where people leave food out for cats, and there are cats. But it turns out all the cats had been kicked out by a gang of raccoons that were really fucking intense raccoons. They were not the raccoons that I grew up with. They were like Brooklyn raccoons that did not give a fuck. They were really in our faces, that we always were like, boo, whatever. And they were just like, and so, we were shooting all those intense scenes with MacLeod and Evan, and Libby was doing sound, and she was just like, it was the whole adventure of shooting between 10 and 5 a.m. on those streets was definitely, there were lots of, in many ways we got very lucky because we were wandering all over the place. I did a lot of scouting, but that was all part of the experience.
Oh yeah, those upside down days were so wild and in a row, and you got so sick at a certain point.
I did. Yeah, I got really, really quite sick, but I think it worked. Sometimes when you're really sick, you're just like, the only way out is through, man, and we're just gonna do this. And I think it I hope that it informs the performance in some way. That might have been my training for the ghostly aspects of that.
I feel like I'm dying.
Yeah.
And this is when sick just meant sick. Like you got sick and everyone's like, you'll be fine. You remember those days? Because I don't.
No, barely. Really, it's true. Like
very weird.
It's a strange time.
It's a strange time,
yeah.
Well, you guys were, I think we're running low on time. We have one more actually, as maybe a final note. We have an anonymous comment just saying that the actors were amazing, absolutely amazing. So congratulations once again from anonymous person. So yeah, congratulations once again. And it's funny that you were mentioning cats because MacLeod and Perry, do you guys remember at Fantasia for your first screening, there's a Fantasia tradition? So that's when the movie's starting up that everybody does a little bit of a meow. So I think maybe a nice appropriate little meow as a salutations maybe for tonight.
Oh yeah.
So let's all just do a meow.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Meow.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Remember, all those who are watching, there's a Fantasia Gather. You can go and hang out there and talk to people and, you know, discuss the film. Of course, thank you so much to Perry, everybody on set, everybody who you guys made this movie alive, and it was so amazing. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us so late at night. But yeah, so thank you so much, everybody. Bon cinéma, enjoy your night, and have a good one, guys. Bye.
Thanks,
now.
everybody.
So much. Thank you. Bye.
Au revoir.